Hi, welcome to part 2 of the NASA crawler build. I think at the point I left it last time, I'd put one of these together, one of the motor units, and I was still printing most of the parts. Just switch to the other camera there so you can see this is now pretty much completed. I've used fine solder to sort of drape these cables over the tractor unit. I'm assuming these provide power to the motors here, and they run underneath as well in the cable trays under the arms. I've also added some finer wire. When you look at photos of this, there's lots of dangling sort of loops of cable. Added some small tiny details. There's just lots of little points to focus on, and there's little sort of panels with I'm presuming there's some sort of junction boxes and things like that. So it's just to add a little bit of interest to it, and I've now got to do that to the rest of these. I've built the other three bases of the tractor unit now. Again, all resin printed, and but I've got the arms to fit yet, and all these cables. And the biggest progress I've made is on this thing here. We'll just switch back to the other view for a minute. As I've scaled this down from a original model, which was 1 to 60th scale, down to 1/144th. I think I mentioned in the other video that the resin, as it's got thinner, obviously they're quite weak and brittle, some of these parts. So where there's detail, I've gone with the resin. But where it's not really going to be seen, rather than doing the full interior of this, which is what you can actually print off, I'm going with this fairly solid styrene construction. And I've gone for that because this has got to be strong enough to support the weight of the MLP on top of it, plus the shuttle above again. And so what I don't want is this, sort of lasting a while and then suddenly collapsing under its own weight. So I've gone for strength here, really. So if you look at the underneath, I've used the resin parts in places for some of this girder work, but the rest of it has been done in styrene just to add that stiffness to the bottom of it. These vents, the instructions suggest that they're cut through from the inside, so you can see them detailed inside and out. But given that you're not going to see any of this inside, or certainly where the vents are, I've decided to just glue them onto the bottom. And that's only really so that when it's the right way up, the actual ground clearance is so low that I think you'll struggle to see anything more than a vague sort of box on the bottom, really. So that's going to look fine. These end panels, let's just switch back to the other view. So these end panels here, this is the full resin part. The instructions themselves suggest that you use a piece of styrene to create the wall with the windows in, and then it's detailed with these plant-on girder parts, and the floor is made up of the grating. Now technically this grating should be the entire floor, but again, to add a bit of strength to it, particularly around where these the arms are going to fit to, I've gone with styrene under the floor, because when this is viewed from the front you will still see this grating, but not very much, because a lot of this is covered with pipe work anyway. And the this part should be open here with the grating, but it isn't because I'm after the strength. So so that's where that's got to so far. There's some panels have got to be fitted in here with windows in as well. So the only view to the interior really is through these two side portions here, which by the time this is all closed up, there's not going to be very much visible in here anyway. I'll put a few sort of bits of detail in just to busy it up. And there is another wall that's got to go on this section here. So overall, because the main focus of this build isn't the crawler, it's the shuttle on top of the launch pad, I'm happy with what you're going to see of this. On the side here, I was doing just a bit of measuring out, and where I've put these crosses here is where I'm going to connect the arms, and they're going to be done via on this side, because I can go right inside this compartment. I'm going to run a piece of brass tubing right the way through there, which is going to project and then go into a hole in this part. On this point, because you see it from the inside, there's just going to be a brass pin pushed through there and hidden on the other side by a little false junction box, purely so that there's some positive connection to these arms, because these have got to go on like this, you see, and all the weight is going to be on the bottom of this. And I'm conscious that, you know, the total weight of the launch pad and the shuttle is going to be, it's not super heavy, but it's going to be heavy enough that I don't want it to be just relying purely on these resin pieces and this joint here. If that was just glued to that with no positive connection, there's a good chance that that will shear off at some point. And particularly if I take it to a show and, you know, it's going to be moved around and things like that. So I'm going to try and make this as sort of bulletproof as possible. Just on the subject of the MLP, if I bring this into view here, this is obviously going to fit on here somewhere there. The camera angle makes it look like it's off center, but it's not really. It's just the way the camera's picking up that view. And obviously these arms are going to fit to the side here, and then this one on the other side here, and obviously the one I've built with the tractor on is going to go on the other side. So that gives you an idea of, you know, how far in it sits. Now obviously the tractor parts themselves stick out a little bit further, so they come to that kind of limit on the edge of the MLP. And there's also some catwalks front and back that run along the front of this. So it is all to scale with this. It's the correct scale. And what little you're going to see of this really underneath, your eyes mainly going to focus on the tracks and maybe just the catwalks on the sides and the ends, and the rest of it's going to be in shadow. So I'm not too worried about the sort of super detail in the interior of it, because none of it's really going to be seen. The other thing I'm going to do for strength is on the actual construction of the crawler itself. When you see it without anything on top of it, from this point to this point is like a solid panel, but here it's open with like an X girder there and there. Now I'm actually for strength going to go with a solid panel right across the top. However, I do have some of these parts which are kind of thinned down versions of the part that should be there, and these are going to fit. It's not a perfect fit at the moment, it'll need gluing in, these are going to fit here, and they're there purely to sit on the underside of the of this whole roof part, so that if you view it from the front and sort of look upwards, you'll see the girder. I doubt any of it's going to be visible, to be honest, because I don't think, but by the time I've built the diorama and this is far enough away from the viewer, you'll really struggle to get underneath to actually see anything in there. So I'm not too worried about the absolute perfect construction of this, as long as it gives the impression. It's what Shep Payne used to call creative gizmology, where he used to just put something there just to give the impression that there was something, but it might not be absolutely to scale. So they'll do for that. And as I say, this is going to be sort of more solid. It's going to have the brass tubing coming through here, and again, if I put a little bit of epoxy on either side of there, that's going to completely stiffen this up. So it's going to be quite strong, this, and it's going to be able to take the weight. And I'll probably put some positive fixings into the roof of this to go into the base of the MLP, so that it's got a positive location and none of it's ever going to come apart. I'm thinking of using a method to attach the shuttle, so that I can possibly swap the shuttle out for another, you know, another version of the shuttle. I could go with an earlier version or a different shuttle. Somebody mentioned about picking up the Revell modified shuttle from Armageddon and having an Armageddon version, the one with the extra booster. So again, yeah, I could potentially do that. That's going to be removable, so that when this travels to a show, this and the MLP will be one piece. The shuttle will be a separate piece that slots on the top. Obviously the gantry and everything is going to be stood away from this, as I mentioned, because of the scale discrepancies. This is going to be approaching that. So all being well, it'll look the part once it's together. So a bit to do on this yet. I've got the catwalks and everything to print off yet, but I'm not really going to worry about those until I've got this looking pretty solid and maybe painted up, and I'll add the catwalks later. And it adds a little bit of colour to it, because this is predominantly grey, but then the railings on the catwalks are yellow, and there's a few odd panels that are sort of red and yellow on it as well. And there's also some NASA logos and some numbers and things like that. So I'll have to do some decals, sort of print some up to get those on. And there are some small placards here and there with instructions on, which I may actually cut off the card model and just glue them onto this directly, because they would actually physically be signs. They wouldn't just be a printed sort of sticker on the side. They would be like a metal sign. So if they look slightly 3D, then that'll look good. And obviously I'll be able to add some figures to it as well. So good progress so far. I think this will be a lot stronger once I put the roof on it. I've just got to put these two internal walls in here, and I'm going to spray this up. There's some pipe work to go in here as well, and then I'll spray up the interior before I put the lid on, and then obviously I can paint the outside. And but it's starting to come together. So as ever, if you like this and like the video, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and I'll aim to get another couple of videos out over the next few days, and so look out for those. So thanks for watching.